In today's eye-opening video, we'll delve deep into the jaw-dropping filthy secrets of Louis XIV's court, exploring the shocking hygiene horrors, shadowy figures, and mysterious health problems that plagued the king's reign. And trust us, you won't believe what we uncover about the royal bathroom revelations and scandalous affairs. Plus, stay tuned for a sneak peek into one of the most painful and equally embarrassing conditions suffered by Louis XIV. The filthy hygiene horror show, quite literally. Have you ever wondered what it was like to live in the lap of luxury at Versailles during the reign of Louis XIV? Versailles, the pinnacle of wealth and extravagance, reached its height of power under the rule of Louis XIV. The king, known for his love of all things lavish, spared no expense in the masterpiece of architectural splendor. But behind the mask of gold-plated luxury lay a dirty little secret that tainted the royal residence. Picture this: the corridors of Versailles lined with priceless artworks and adorned with shimmering chandeliers. Yet amidst the grandeur lurked a problem as old as time: the call of nature. You see, even kings couldn't escape the inevitable need to relieve themselves, and thus the royal chamber pots came into play. Now, these weren't your ordinary chamber pots. Oh no, they were crafted from the finest gold, fit for a monarch of Louis XIV's nature. But despite their regal appearance, they served a decidedly unglamorous purpose: to collect human waste. For the maids tasked with emptying these golden vessels, it was a never-ending process. Imagine the palace across royal gardens and woods going on for miles. The thought of trekking back and forth to dispose of the chamber pot contents was simply unthinkable. So they took matters into their own hands. Or rather, out the window. Can you imagine the horror of arriving at the king's palace only to navigate through piles of, well, literal shit thrown about the grounds? It might make some good fertilizer, but I mean, come on. Even the finest perfumes of Paris couldn't mask the stench that hung heavy in the air. And with nearly 10,000 servants and maids bustling about the palace, the problem only grew worse. Overflowing chamber pots seeped into walls, floors, and ceilings, turning the once magnificent halls of Versailles into portable toilets. It wasn't long before people stopped bothering to clean up the mess, opting instead to relieve themselves wherever they pleased. Suddenly, the grand corridors and galleries of Versailles became makeshift restrooms, with women lifting their skirts in the open and men urinating off staircases in the royal chapel. That would certainly make for a really inappropriate baptism. And amidst it all, the ongoing construction of the palace for 40 years added to the filth, coating everything from the statues to the guards' armor in a layer of dust. But wait, it gets even worse. Despite its reputation for magnificence, living conditions at Versailles were similar to the slums of Paris and London. And even after the introduction of bathrooms in 1768, there were only 9 for a palace containing over 700 rooms, which literally makes no sense. Visiting beggars and aristocrats alike would relieve themselves in corridors or beneath staircases, further adding to the filth that covered the palace. And the fact that this was just normal is what's crazy. Things remained even more filthy during the king's grandson's rule, whose wife, the one and only Marie Antoinette, had a terrible accident. According to historian Tony Spofforth, Marie Antoinette was once hit by literal human waste being thrown out the window as she walked through an interior courtyard. Now, since this waste had been building up for the last 2 generations, the heavily trafficked latrines often leaked into the bedrooms below them. Oh god, imagine the roof of your bedroom about to explode due to shit. To add to this, blockages and corrosion in the palace's iron and lead pipes would occasionally poison everything in Marie Antoinette's kitchen. This unsanitary way of living obviously led to countless deaths throughout royal European households. The stench of body odor. Prepare to hold your nose and suppress your gag reflex, because the lack of toilets was just the beginning. In the 17th and 18th centuries, France was gripped by a fear of water that bordered on the irrational. It was believed that bathing was not only unnecessary, but downright dangerous, with hot water thought to be detrimental to health, and regular baths feared to cause infections and epidemics. Some historians believe that this fear was because of a myth that it opened the pores and allowed illnesses to seep into the body. Water shyness was so prevalent among the royal men and women that baths were a rarity, if not entirely unheard of. Especially for Louis, who is rumored to have bathed, and wait for it, yes, just twice in his life. Let that sink in. According to historian Mathieu Davina, the king's bathing habits were just horrid, with baths reserved for therapeutic purposes rather than cleanliness. Instead, he opted for a dry wash, where his valet would cleanse his body with aqua vitae, a 90% proof ethanol alcohol, leaving behind the lingering and very strong scent of disinfectant. That man basically smelled like alcohol and sanitizer. The royals basically relied on perfumed cloths to cleanse their bodies and clothing. Yes, even the most elite individuals dared not wash their hair with water. The results? Greasy locks and a host of hygiene problems that would make modern dermatologists cringe. Do you know what the luxurious bathrooms were used for instead? Some have said that the bathing quarters were a venue for intimacy and intercourse. One of the most popular bathing chambers was one the king had commissioned for his mistress in the Maidem apartments. But perhaps the most shocking revelation comes from the realm of dental hygiene, or rather, the lack thereof. Despite their status as nobles, many residents of Versailles had dirty, decayed teeth, a fact that was often concealed rather than addressed. With water considered too risky for oral hygiene, mouthwashes made from urine were not uncommon, serving as a grim reminder of the lengths to which people would go to mask their bad breath. How did mouthwash made from urine help the problem instead of worsen it? I don't know. The shadowy figures at Versailles. Within the luxurious halls of Versailles, a cast of characters lurked in the shadows, their influence shaping the course of history in ways that were very secretive. Among the most mysterious figures were the spies and informants, who operated in the shadows, their ears attuned to every whisper and their eyes watching every movement. Tasked with uncovering plots and uncovering rebellions, these clandestine operatives served as the king's eyes and ears, ensuring that no threat to his rule went unnoticed or unpunished. At the heart of this web of espionage was the Bureau of State, a secretive organization tasked with gathering intelligence and rooting out enemies of the crown. Led by the infamous spy master Antoine François, Marquis de Louvois, the Bureau employed a vast network of agents and informants, their identities known only to a select few. From high-ranking nobles to lowly servants, no one was beyond suspicion, and even the most innocent conversation could be fodder for investigation. But the shadowy world of espionage was not confined to Versailles alone. Beyond the palace walls, rival powers and foreign agents sought to infiltrate the king's court, their motives unknown and their allegiances ever-shifting. From the salons of Paris to the courts of Europe, whispers of conspiracy and betrayal echoed through the corridors of power as rival factions battled for control of Louis's realm. Too much love to give. Amidst the cloak and dagger spy movies of espionage, there existed another group of shadowy figures whose influence extended far beyond the realm of politics. There lurked a world of passion, betrayal, and scandal. This other group were none other than the courtiers and courtesans who navigated the treacherous waters of the royal court with grace and cunning. Yes, we are talking about prostitutes. Louis XIV was a man of many passions, but perhaps none greater than his love for the fairer sex. Indeed, the king had so much love to give that one palace or one woman was never enough for him. From his affair with Marie Mancini, the niece of Cardinal Mazarin, to his scandalous alliances with the likes of Louise de la Vallière and Madame de Montespan, Louis XIV's romantic escapades were the stuff of legend. These women wielded their influence with finesse, shaping the king's decisions and shaping the course of history in ways both subtle and profound. He actually wanted to marry Marie Mancini, but the cardinal and his mother, Anne of Austria, never approved of the match, and playing the Wicked Witch card, she got the poor princess exiled. Louis then married Marie Theresa of Austria for the treaty that secured the end of the Franco-Spanish War. But soon he was chasing women all around Versailles. His first official mistress was Louise de la Vallière, with whom he did what he was doing for 13 years, and she even lived with him. And their kids were very oddly legitimized, which, if he wasn't king, they probably would have been killed. Yet for all his conquests, it was Madame de Montespan who truly captured the king's heart. Theirs was a love affair that scandalized the court. From the moment they met during the Flanders campaign in 1667, the king was smitten, and soon Madame de Montespan held power over Versailles like no other. Her influence was such that the king held the great royal entertainment at Versailles in her honor, and she soon moved into a prestigious apartment right next to the king's own chambers, which was even more spacious than the queen's. Talk about the side chick winning! But even the most passionate of affairs must eventually come to an end, and so it was with Louis XIV and Madame de Montespan. After her temper cost her the king's favor, Louis XIV turned to the youthful charms of Mademoiselle de Fontaine, igniting a scandal that would rock the court to its core and ultimately lead to the demise of Queen Marie Theresa. And his beloved ex, Madame de Montespan, was one of the convicts that were found guilty. Oh, and then we had another woman as well, Madame de Maintenon, the governess of the king's children with his previous lover. Yes, basically the babysitter of the most famous affair's children. She demanded to marry the king if he wished to continue a relationship with her, and surprisingly succeeded in tying the knot with him. Yet amidst the turmoil of romantic entanglements, there existed another, darker side to life at Versailles. Prostitution, rampant in the surrounding woodlands, posed a constant threat to the king's grand vision for his palace. Workers, plagued by disease and distraction, slowed construction, prompting Louis XIV to take drastic action. First, he outlawed prostitution, but when that failed, he imposed harsh penalties on those caught engaging in the trade. Prostitutes would be whipped in public, their clients subjected to the gruesome punishment of having their noses and ears cut off. Which some might say seems pretty hypocritical of him, considering this is the same man who only ever used his bathroom for this purpose. While difficult to enforce, these measures did have some effect, eventually driving much of the prostitution away from Versailles and into the shadowy neighborhoods of Paris. So for all their power and influence, these women existed in a delicate balance, their fortunes rising and falling with the king and the shifting currents of politics. The mysterious maladies. Now, we still have another filthy secret for you, which was one of the most painful things Louis XIV suffered. Now, before we delve too deep into the nitty-gritty details, let me paint you a picture of just how big of a problem this was. Imagine, if you will, a king renowned for his grandeur, majesty, and power, forced to rule people with a painful and embarrassing condition that left him unable to sit comfortably on his throne. It's a scene straight out of a royal nightmare, isn't it? So, what was it? It was an anal fistula. And what exactly is an anal fistula, you ask? Well, in simple terms, it's a tiny tunnel that forms between the skin and the anal canal, usually as a result of infection or inflammation. Not exactly the kind of thing you want to discuss over tea and crumpets, especially not if you are the King of France. Louis XIV's anal fistula became a source of immense discomfort and embarrassment for the monarch, leading to excruciating pain and mobility issues. It's said that the king underwent multiple surgeries in a desperate bid to alleviate his suffering, but to no avail. In fact, his condition only seemed to worsen over time. But obviously something had to be done, but no surgeon dared lay hands on the Sun King without prior practice. And guess what the rumored practice was? Yes, human subjects being used as experiments, a lot of whom are reported not to have survived, and being buried as soon as possible so no one knew the truth. Talk about special treatment. The great operation was planned in detail and in complete secrecy. Only a select few were aware of the plans. The operation itself was a horrific and painful ordeal, lasting 3 hours, and performed without any form of anesthesia. The surgeon was especially concerned with finding the correct type of instrument, so developed the royal probe, which was a very scary-looking, long, curved silver probe. Despite the excruciating pain, Louis XIV remained remarkably composed, and miraculously, the operation was a success. Louis XIV emerged cured, his dignity intact, and his spirits surprisingly high. So the next time you find yourself marveling at the splendor of Versailles, spare a thought for the man who ruled it all, his body ravaged by disease and discomfort, for even the king himself was not immune to the whims of fate. Well, we hope you're shocked as we unveiled the shocking truths hidden within the walls of Versailles. From the unspeakable horrors of royal hygiene to the clandestine world of courtly affairs and the harrowing medical struggles of Louis XIV, we've uncovered the darkest secrets of the Sun King's reign. But this was only the beginning, so don't miss out on more fascinating historical revelations. Hit the like and subscribe button and join us for our next deep dive into the mysteries of the past. And don't forget to comment about what stories you would like to hear.